Hello, friends. A very good morning to all of you. Today's topic is a response by C. Rajamohan to the criticism that certain opposition leaders and some newspaper columnists belonging to a certain school of thought use against the incumbent government, that the government has failed to maintain good relationship with its neighbors, or without, if I may use this term without using any euphemism, that the government has failed to maintain India's clout in its immediate neighborhood. So this topic is talking about how uh, India has always found it difficult to maintain supremacy in this region, especially since independence. So this topic divides India's regional supremacy in two time frames, that is before independence, and the second part is after independence. So it is saying, Siraj Mohan is saying that India maintained regional supremacy before independence, and just after the independence, the so called India's regional supremacy started to decline, especially since uh, PM Nehru's time. Okay, and the factors that for such decline have been discussed very beautifully by this in this article by C. Rajamohan. So this article is basically a one-stop shop for all of you aspirants of both general studies, and more specifically for students uh, who have political science as their optional. So let us move forward to this article and discuss how India has found it difficult to manage its relationship with its neighborhood. So it is saying, C. Rajamohan is discussing that generally we accuse the incumbent government that India is losing clout in its neighborhood. But is it really the case that only this government has made it impossible to maintain cordial relationship with our neighborhood? C. Rajamohan is saying that it is not the case. It is not a new phenomena. It has always been the case since independence. So he is giving some examples that during 1977 general elections, the opposition parties, uh, led by Janata Party, was criticizing Prime Minister Indira Gandhi because she exercised hegemony in South Asia. She was known to be hard, and she exercised a hard diplomatic and hard she utilized actually hard power more than the soft power in India's immediate neighborhood. So these opposition leaders were promising that they would repair all the strained relationships in South Asia when they would come to power. But when they came back to power in 1977, after the emergency was lifted, the same problem arose with this government also, that is the government of Prime Minister Morarji Desai and Foreign Minister A.B. Vajpayee. So it is saying that it has always been the case, no matter who is in power, the so-called regional supremacy of India has always suffered due to the reasons that this article discusses later, and we'll also discuss about it later. Okay, so let us see the first phase when India enjoyed supremacy in not just South Asia but also in Indian Ocean, and uh, a little bit of in a little bit also in Indo-Pacific region, per se. Okay, so it is saying that before independence, India was enjoying supremacy just because there was sole superpower, Britain. The British Raj was so powerful, there was almost non existent neighbors of India. Pakistan was a part of India. Bangladesh was a part of India. Other countries such as Nepal and Bhutan, Afghanistan were either under the supremacy or suzerainty of British Raj, or they had almost nil power to challenge British Raj. So he's saying, he means C. Rajamohan is saying, because of being the sole superpower, the sole sovereign, all the uh, differences could never, any of the differences actually could never arose against the British Raj, because it exercised suzerainty and sovereignty over the entire region. So it is saying Indian Ocean littoral, the Indian Ocean space was dominated by Royal British Navy and the Indian Army, and there was free flow of capital and labor across the Indo-Pacific, because this British Raj dominated the seas, and they surrounded themselves on the continental side, on the South Asian continent. They surrounded themselves with buffer states and protectorates. You may be remembering that Nepal, Tibet, and Afghanistan, uh, even Burma to a certain extent, they were either the buffer states against the big powers, or they were the protectorates of British Raj. Some uh, local provinces in India also were either directly ruled by the British, or they were under the suzerainty of British Empire. So there was no actual challenge to them. So regional supremacy came automatically, and British India exercised supremacy in the entire region. Still, it is this article is saying that even after such a sovereign power, there this the maintenance of this power was not without costs. Okay, so because European powers such as Dutch, French, German, even Russians and Japanese constantly challenged the primacy of Britain in this region. You may be remembering certain European wars, then Russian threats, then including Japanese threat, especially during the Second World War. So this great game was not just this great game of supremacy came at a cost, even for Britain. Okay, so the apart from the international threats, there were local threats also. See, there were threats in South Africa. You may be remembering the Boers War in South Africa. Just for those who don't know about it, Boers War was fought by British against two states of Free Orange, something like that, Free Orange country and South Africa, due in in context of a diamond and gold trade. So this trade, it was actually a trade war. It was a war for resources. And the second one is Fakir of EP in Waziristan. So this one relates to the Pashtunistan movement, which is active even now against Pakistan today. So this Fakir of EP in Waziristan was demanding a separate state, a separate state of Pashtunistan in the region of Waziristan, and this Fakir demanded that these Pashtuns did not want to be a part of either India or Pakistan. But when British left, they made Waziristan a province of Pakistan. So this Pashtunistan movement is still uh, prevalent in the regions of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, that is the region of Pashtuns, and they find support even from Afghanistan. Well, anyways, this is not a point of discussion. I'm just telling you about these local rebellions. So Britain had to fend off such local rebellions also, from apart from the international ones. So it is saying that when India got independent, so Prime Minister Nehru uh, continued the legacy of British Raj by retaining some political agents in India's neighborhood, and these political agents had the mentality of colonial administration. Uh, they were uh, they were the legatees of foreign and political department of British Raj, and the consequence of which was seen by uh, us in the form of security treaties with Bhutan, Sikkim, and Nepal. With the Bhutan, the treaty was signed in 1949, and with Sikkim and Nepal, the treaties were signed in 1950s. So, in the South Asian region, Prime Minister Nehru was signaling that we are the power here, we are the big power here. But beyond this region, Prime Minister Nehru was emphasizing equality among nations. So there was a dual policy under which India was exercising supremacy in South Asia, but at the same time, it was advocating equality among all the nations beyond the South Asian continent. But slowly, this supremacy had to decline because of several factors, and now we will discuss all those factors which uh, led to the deterioration of India's regional supremacy that we maintained since the British Raj till the till India's independence. So C. Rajamohan has given 5 arguments, and all of these arguments are valid, and these arguments will be valid even next year until or unless there is a uh, very big or a major change in India's policy towards its neighborhood. So, anyways, so the first let us come directly to discussing these points. So, first, he's saying that the partition of the subcontinent was itself the cause of um, division in South Asia. So, as you know, that the India and Pakistan were divided on religious lines. So, there is a burden of history between India and its neighbors, including Bangladesh and to certain extent Sri Lanka and all that. They have a burden of history. They have historical grievances with each other, and no amount of good neighborly policy or settlement of boundary disputes, sharing river waters, and all that. Any of new initiatives cannot erase the historical grievances of these countries with India or vice versa. So the partition of subcontinent is related to our historical burden that exists in this region. Okay, so the second thing is arrival of China. So before independence, British Raj was extremely powerful. It used to uh, ingress into the Chinese state, as you may have read about the Opium Wars. British Raj won several wars against China. So before India's independence, it was British India that used to ingress into the borders of China. But after 1950, when China was unified and China got independent, there was a role reversal. Now it was time for China to expand towards India. That we are seeing it even now. China is expanding and it is claiming old territories that British India or the British Raj captured from the erstwhile Chinese nation. So this is also a major reason of uh, conflicts in South Asia, where China is expanding into our region and it is pursuing its policy of expansionism by using our neighbors against us. So The third point is India's independent choice in favor of deglobalization. Now, what is this term deglobalization? India started looking inwards in late 1960s, especially during the time of Prime Minister Indira Gandhi, when we went for import substitution policies and we went for bank nationalization and all that. When we were looking for self dependency, and we were not in favor of foreign trade. We were not in favor of making any imports. We were looking inwards. So when you are looking inwards, you are not indulging in trade with your neighbors or with the rest of the world. It becomes a policy of deglobalization. Globalization, it means actively trading and interacting with your neighbors and the rest of the world. So deglobalization is the antonym of globalization. So India was looking inwards. India started looking inwards. India pursued the policy of import substitution industrialization. And when we were pursuing such inward looking policies, we were destined to ignore our relationship with neighbors, because we thought that we don't need them in our quest for economic independence. We are looking to become self sufficient and self dependent. So, anyways, after India's liberalization, privatization, and globalization policies, or the economic reforms that we say to the 1991 economic reforms, India opened its economic space. And when India opened its economic space, it started realizing that now it also needs our neighbors to be a part of our economic aspirations, and we made them a part. We, at least we tried to make them a part of our economic goal and economic policy. It has opened the space for cooperation to a certain extent in economic domain, but it we have not certainly realized its full potential yet. Okay, so now coming to the fourth point, it is saying C. Rajamohan is saying that there is a persistent fallacy in Delhi. When we are talking about Delhi, it means the central government or the government of India. There is a fallacy in government of India that neighborhood is India's to will. Okay, so he's saying that we have a misconception that um, we are the uh, major power of South Asia, and all these countries would agree to what we want, and the leaders in this region will uh, directly or indirectly be in agreement with our policies, and they would cooperate with us at our uh, own at our with our conditions actually. So it is a misconception, because Sira Jammohan is saying that we need to realize that as these countries rise economically, uh, there and certain form of democracies are injected into them. The these This democracy leads to mass politics, and when mass politics enter into any electoral arena, the elites are forced to take positions which are which which find resonance within the public. So the elites in our neighborhood are forced to take anti-India position, because that is what the masses in those countries like to hear. And when as you can see, we have seen as recently as in Nepal, the prime minister is taking a very different the prime minister of Nepal is taking a very anti-India position, because he is able to do it because the public of Nepal is wishing for it. Whoever comes to power in Nepal, they have to rant something against India, because of the pressures of mass politics. I'm just giving an example of Nepal because many of you may not be aware of the rest of the neighbors and the politics uh, and their domestic politics. Nepal's domestic politics has been in news in the last few months, so that's why I'm giving you an example of Nepal only. So also, he's saying that these divisions, these elites, try to balance out India with other powers such as China and Russia, China, US, and even Russia. Like Pakistan is using the Russia card against us. They have been using the US card and China card. Many countries in Nepal, many countries such as Nepal, Bangladesh, Maldives, Sri Lanka, they have been using the cards of China against India because of their elites having uh, certain aspirations. They do not want to put all their eggs in one basket, that is the basket of India. They want to diversify their sources of finance, their sources of um, they want to diversify their sources so that they can maintain preponderance in their domestic politics, and in case it requires them to uh, seek electoral support, they would not shy away from using their anti-India stance. Even if they don't agree with it, they would still use their anti-India rhetoric to gain electoral support in this region because of the compulsions of democracy. Okay, so India has to realize that this is the new reality with the rise of uh, economic with the rise of with the economic rise of our neighbors, and the strengthening of democracy in this in these countries. We have to accept that these are the challenges of domestic politics. So, not just the domestic politics of these countries, India has to accept the implications of India's own domestic politics in in context of its relationship with our its neighbors. Okay, so as you may have seen recently, the Citizenship Amendment Act, the Kashmir issue has been a matter of debate in not just India but also in India's immediate neighborhood. When we talk about Tamil rights in Sri Lanka, there is a direct implication of it in Tamil Nadu uh, state. Okay, so Siraj Mohan is given an example that during the Colombo Commonwealth Summit in 2013, Indian Prime Minister Manmohan Singh could not attend the event because Congress leaders from Tamil Nadu opposed his visit because due to the issue of Tamil rights in Sri Lanka. Similarly, the Teesta River Water Agreement was under was under a back burner until as recently as in 2015 and 16, when we finally made agreements with um, we finally made agreements with Bangladesh on the land boundary dispute, but uh, on the issues of Teesta water agreements, there is still some reservations in our domestic politics, due to which government of India cannot take a stance with Bangladesh government. So similarly, this happened in 2011 also, when Mamata Banerjee pulled the plug at the last moment when Prime Minister Singh was about to sign the Teesta water agreement in with Bangladesh in the year 2011. So not just the domestic politics of our regional countries, the domestic politics of India also has adverse repercussions on our relationship with our neighbors. Okay, so he is talking about what is the way forward, how we can accept this reality and how we can change this reality in our favor. So first of all, he's asking, he's suggesting that we have to realize that the The societies of South Asia are deeply interconnected, but the problems are arising because there are multiple sovereigns here. Now, before independence, there was just one sovereign, British Raj. So there was no scope of any disagreements or disputes. But today, we have an interconnected society in the entire region, but there are multiple sovereigns. There are sovereigns. They are in multiple states. Therefore, problems are bound to rise. As we have discussed in the 5 points above, we have to accept this reality, and by accepting this reality, we have to move forward by carefully managing the difficulties as and when they arise. So there cannot be we cannot actually we cannot crystal ball gaze what challenges would arise in the future. So we have to carefully manage all the issues that arise with time. Like we could not have actually predicted predicted the stance of Nepal on the Kalapani issue. This this was a radical shift for in case of India-Nepal relations. But now, as we are witnessing this case, we have to carefully manage this issue at this time. Similarly, for a future issue that we cannot foresee today, we will carefully manage that issue in the future also. So, he's saying that timely responses to emerging problems, uh, like in this whenever the problems arise, we have to respond it in time. We cannot just afford to defer these problems to another generation or to another point of time. We have to face those problems and we have to find the solutions amicably with our neighbors. Okay, so secondly, he's saying that we have to prevent small issues from becoming big. When let us take example of Nepal blockade in 2015. It was a small issue, but it went out of hand, and India was forced to uh, pull back the Nepalese government uh, through the use of its stick policy. So India tries to maintain its so-called supremacy in the region by using the policy of carrot and stick. But during the Nepal blockade, it was actually forced to use the stick against Nepal. So if small issues can be prevented from becoming big, India would not need to use the stick against the our neighbors. So similarly, it is saying that we have to align our economic policy with India's natural geographic advantages. So as you know that let's take the example of Nepal and Bangladesh. Nepal is a landlocked country, so whenever we formulate any economic policy with respect to this region, we have to take it into account that we have certain advantages uh, with respect to such these neighbors such as Nepal and Bangladesh. Bangladesh similarly, we enjoy India is enjoying a geographical advantage that in Bangladesh only neighbor here with which it shares its boundary is India. So we have certain economic advantages. So all these geographical advantages that we have here, we should fully explore them to our own advantage without miffing these countries against without actually miffing these countries against our interest. Okay, so this is the way forward for maintaining India's relationship with its neighborhood. So this article is actually a very good article. It has divided, as I told you before, it has divided India's neighborhood policy into two segments, that is before independence and after independence, and it has beautifully discussed the changes in both the phases. So it will be a one-stop shop answer for your uh, for any question that comes in your examination with respect to India's neighborhood policy. You can use these points, and your points, you can even mention the name of the author, that is C. Rajamohan, and it will fetch you good marks. So we'll meet next time with another topic. Until then, goodbye and thank you.